almost like an alternative to that.
Well, we fundamentally disagree with his announced approach. We were very visible and vocal in the media and on TV, criticizing it, and advocated for a voluntary approach rather than an involuntary approach, recognizing that it's a small percentage of people who need to be involuntarily committed to begin with. And it's not so difficult when you're talking about street homeless people, in the sense that if they're out there threatening people, they meet the criteria. They're a danger to others. But if you approach the street homeless people with saying, we're going to take you to a psych ward, you're not going to get the cooperation you need. And if you approach it with a voluntary approach, with that approach you'll find that there will be people that meet the criteria. Now, in the conversations, the mayor does say that they're going to approach it voluntarily, but they also talk too much and put too much focus on the involuntary part. And initially they were talking about the NYPD being the people who would enforce it. And if you're going to have anyone enforcing whether someone's a danger to themselves or others for mental health reasons, you need either social workers or you need mental health experts, or a combination of both, who are more experienced and trained to make those decisions, because sometimes the decisions are not easy to make. So what we did on that, same thing when the mayor announced that he was going to do encampment sweeps. We thought that that was a terrible idea, because if you have half a dozen or a dozen people at a given encampment area, there's an opportunity for you to go to that place and talk to people and work with them and try to get them to voluntarily leave the encampment area. If you go in and send in the sanitation and the cops and you approach it aggressively, even if you force them because you've got the power to leave, the history is they'll just come back to that location 3 days later or to another location a half mile away. So what are you solving? You're not solving anything. And the approach should be the approach that we've been taking, that it's not easy, but you keep working with the same group of people who are out there in the same location. They get to know you, you get to know them, and you'd be surprised. 1 out of 3 were able in our first year to be able to get people to come off the street. The problem becomes is that even when we get them off the streets and they go to places that currently exist, too often people then leave those places because those services were not adequate and they're back on the street. So there's a revolving door that we're learning, and we're trying to address that. And one of the things we want to do is we want to get permission to go to some of those places and to look at what goes on in those places. And so far, we haven't been very successful in being able to go. In a couple places we went, the volunteers went. For example, people, when you asked that question, who didn't do outreach, but then went to kind of assess the places that they're sending people, they would let us come in to the lobby area, but they wouldn't let us go upstairs to look at the rooms to see what kind of rooms they were and whether or not the conditions were adequate, etc. But again, I think from our perspective, the excitement about the partnership with CUNY. We've been to the College of Staten Island. Tomorrow we're a hostess college in the Bronx. Vitae at Brooklyn College. We're going to do York and Hunter. So those are the 5 places that CUNY has said we can work with this semester. And if it's deemed to be successful, then we'll be able to expand to all the CUNY campuses. And then just think of it. So if we can get out of a group like this, a team here, and maybe with some good coverage in the college newspaper, and other people find out about it, and we can set up a second or a third team within the next few months. And you magnify that by a dozen CUNY campuses around the city, by a year from today, we could really make a big impact on ameliorating the number of people out on the streets. And that could be a huge benefit, not only to the people out on the streets, but for the city as well. And as far as I can tell you, I've done a lot of things. This is very rewarding on a personal level.